where were you in 2003? Were you listening to Where is the Love by the Black Eyed Peas? Or maybe you were driving around in your Hummer because the cost of gasoline was just $1.60 a gallon. I mention it because 2003 was a momentous year in the ETF marketplace that's largely been forgotten, I think. And it's impacted the way that we invest and that we trade today. I'm Ron DeLegge with ETFguide, and in this episode, we're going to examine something called relative weight ETFs and the trend in alternative weighted indexes that was set ablaze and continues to be ablaze today. Now, let's just rewind back to 2003 for a minute. That's when the first equal weighted index ETF was introduced. The name of that fund is the Invesco S&P 500 Equal Weight ETF, ticker RSP. And at the time it was launched, it sparked some controversy. People were asking, well, who dare challenge the idea of building portfolios with anything but traditional market cap weighted funds? Who dare do that? And that was the counter argument against alternative weighted index ETFs at the time made by indexing puristas against this new breed of funds. Now fast forward to now. Few observers could have predicted the ensuing avalanche of alternative weighted funds within the ETF marketplace that the 2003 equal weighted ETF launch would spark. Besides equal weighted funds, there's a multiplicity of alternative weighted ETFs, including funds that do it based on dividends. There's funds that do it based on revenue, equity style. There's even a reverse market cap weighted fund. Now, adding to this trend is a newer species of ETFs that use what's called a relative weight strategy. So how do they work? Well, let's suppose, just for example, that you're bullish on U.S. stocks and you think that the current cycle favors them over developed international stocks. Now, how would you reflect that view in an ETF trade? One strategy could be to own a bullish 2x leveraged ETF like the ProShares Ultra S&P ETF, SSO is the ticker, while simultaneously holding a position in the ProShares Short MSCI EFA, ticker EFZ. Now, the added leverage with SSO reflects your bullish view on U.S. stocks within the S&P 500, while the unleveraged trade in EFZ reflects a bearish view on international stocks. So EFZ aims for a daily 100% opposite exposure to the latter group. Now, the chief obstacle with this particular trading strategy are rules imposed by certain advisory firms. Simply put, these firms do not permit their advisors to buy or invest client assets in bearish ETFs that short markets. So firms have generally outlawed these types of strategies because they just don't want to deal with whatever perceived regulatory scrutiny may come attached. And that's where relative weight ETFs come in, because they offer a viable solution. A similar trade to the one I just described, pairing SSO with EFZ, would be to trade or use ticker symbol RWUI. How does this fund work? Well, RWUI maintains 150% long exposure to the Russell 1000 index and 50% short exposure to the FTSE All-World ex-US index. By combining this long and short exposure, the fund aims to capture the spread or difference in return between the two indexes. Now, because RWUI uses leverage on the bullish side, the bias is obviously towards U.S. stocks over developed international. Since its inception, which was back in January of 2019, RWUI has gained around 31%, whereas the just regular iShares Russell 1000 ETF has climbed around 29.5%. So why the difference in performance gains? Well, the performance advantage of RWUI over IWB is largely due to its added leverage that it uses, coupled with the internal shorting of international developed stocks. Simply put, it's been the right strategy, the right trade, because U.S. stocks have outperformed their global peers. Now, it's worth noting this same strategy of relative weighting with ETFs can be applied to other investment categories too. For example, Direction has paired ETFs that target growth and value stocks. You've also got defensive stocks and cyclical stocks. You've got emerging and developed market stocks, along with large and small company stocks. The New York-based company's lineup includes a total of 10 relative weighted ETFs. And one more plus for investors and for financial advisors, how relative weighting gives them another arrow in their quiver. And you can get your market exposure without borrowing money on margin and without running afoul of firm-wide trading limits that may restrict your ability to short or to use leverage. Moreover, it also allows you to keep your client allocations, if you're an advisor, finely tuned in any type of market climate. And one other thing I want to add too is that these types of ETFs allow you to do a one ticker trade, whereas before you may have had to use 2 or 3 different ETFs to achieve or have the same type of financial objective or market exposure. And that does it for our discussion of relative weighted ETFs. I'm Ron DeLegge with ETF Guide. Thanks for watching.